So as adventures often do start, this one started seemingly very innocently, innocuously, with an invitation to dinner with Bruce and Karen Audie and Pastor David. And I went there unsuspectingly, had a delicious meal, and then we sat around afterwards and we talked for a few hours, and just listening to his vision, his heart, his philosophy. He said things like, we want to change the future, and you heard him say this in church when he was here, but we want to change the future with our young people. And he talked about equipping young leaders and told about how 13 and 14 and 15-year-olds are leading in prominent, important parts of their ministry. And I was just so invigorated by this. And there was a room full of people, but after a certain point, it seemed like it was just him and I, just me firing off questions and him firing off answers. And by the end of the time, he started to say, we have a camp coming up the week of Thanksgiving, very soon, in about a month at the time. He said, you should come. I said, yeah, very nice, maybe sometime, maybe next year. I said, no, you should come. Very nice, maybe next year. So I got a phone call the next morning from Pastor Andrew. He says, so what'd you think? Oh, it was great. How would you like to go? Are you for real? And of course he said, no, I'm kidding you. Of course I'm for real, always. So I had a passport, and I was able to get the time off of work, and a month later, I was walking off the plane, and this was my prayer. God, let me truly see this ministry, warts and all, and let me bring something back that would be worth the investment my church has put in me. So I went there, and right away I joined the team. There were really two teams. There was the Guatemalan team. They had a strong team of young people and adults, and then there was a mission team from Tennessee, and they were both there. They divided and conquered. Half the Tennessee team and half the Guatemalan team went to a village called Rio Dulce, a very rural, needy village, and then half the team, Tennessee and Guatemala, went to an oceanside town called Monterrico. I was able to spend a few days in each location, and in each place I peppered them with questions, tons of questions. What is your vision for your country? What is your vision for the world? What needs do you have? What limitations do you have? What are you doing to overcome them? And the answers that I got, the things I got to see, I just wanted to share 5 observations with you from my experiences there. One is that they truly do consistently equip young people, much younger than we're accustomed to thinking of leaders. Very young people become phenomenal leaders, and I got to see this firsthand. There were tons of examples. There was a strong team of probably 24 Guatemalans. Most of them were between 14 and 16 or 17. But there were 13-year-olds. There were certainly a few older folks, but really not many younger than 26. But I just wanted to talk about 2 young boys I met who were both 14. One is Luis. If you were to see him and just look at his physique, he's about this big around, and he's about this tall. You would think he was 10 years old. But if you watched his expressions and you watched his reactions in all kinds of different situations, you would have thought he was 32. It was unbelievable. The maturity, the tenderness where it was needed when working with children, the firmness, the passion for Christ. I was just blown away that a 14-year-old could possess this kind of depth. And then there was a boy named Angel. It's Angel, but they pronounce the G differently than we do. And this boy was not a counselor, but he was sort of the gopher. Go for this, go for that. He had a little walkie-talkie on his t-shirt. And at any moment, he could be paged wherever he was. You just saw him off like a shot, just incredibly diligent, incredibly competent, and always cheerful. And again, I was just amazed. The second observation that I made was that they do not let limitations limit them. This is not a large church. It's about 150 people. It's not a wealthy church. They're actually a very poor church. But they, at every turn, have not let themselves be walled in by their limitations. If they don't have the money, David travels to the States and raises money. If they don't have the human resources, they gather them. They have about 20 teams from the U.S. or other parts of the world come to their country, to their church, every year, 20 teams. There were about 45 people from Tennessee when I went. And so 20 teams of about that size come and go in this country. If they don't have the knowledge, they gathered that. They have 2 missionaries, a full-time pastor, a number of assistant pastors, and this is missionaries to their country. They have sponsors from the states who pay their salaries. It was an incredibly aggressive ministry without what we would think of the resources right on hand. They just were constantly innovating. They also delegated very well. Also very exciting to see this team. They would play to each other's strengths, and they would just hand off to some responsible person some aspect of the ministry and just let them run with it. And it was, again, it's very invigorating. They were very strategic in approaching their goals. They have a vision to change their country, and not to stop there. They want to see the world changed. They focus on 1 or 2 villages in their country, and they focus on changing things on a deep level and not so much a broad level. They never do any good deed, whether it's building schools or clinics or whatever the project may be that may be needed. They never do anything, but they do it through the local church. If somebody comes to them with a need, with a problem, they turn them to that local pastor. And so the goal and the result has been that those local pastors are elevated in society. Instead of being no-name citizens, they are influential members of their communities. And the goal was that by targeting a few select villages, other villages would start to, sort of, what do they got that we don't have? And the answer is a strong local church. And so that's already beginning to happen. In addition to that, other countries are beginning to see what they're doing. They were approached by Christians from Colombia saying, we see what you're doing. We love it. Can you help us do that here? And so sure enough, just as one of the first questions I had is, what's your vision for your country? And they said, well, for the world, we want to pass on what we know and what God has done for us to the world. And so sure enough, they are sending mission teams from their church and their country to other third world countries. And the 5th thing that I really carried away of their tremendous strengths was they are incredibly rugged, very rugged. There are no sissies for Jesus. There are G.I. Joes for Jesus. They have a youth program for kids ages 13 to 18. It lasts about 3 years. Kids get theological training. They also get a very broad array of other kinds of skills. From mechanics, if a vehicle were to break down in a rural village, they need to know what to do, to sort of survival wilderness training. There's a project where they're required to actually go out and hunt and kill and eat and do it all in the right way. They're equipping missionaries to go to other third world countries and be ready to lay down their luxuries and their rights for the kingdom of God. And it was, again, just beautiful to observe their heart and their intensity for their cause. So those are my 5 observations I wanted to share with you. Wow, we can expect and entrust to our young people far more than we are used to doing. Here in the States, we're used to stretching out adolescents for a long period of time and not necessarily trusting young people and certainly not equipping them. And that has already begun to change. I've kind of already got new eyes. Thank you very much for that early Christmas present to be sent there. And I know that it's already paid dividends in my life and ministry personally, and I do hope it does continue to do that for this church. Thank you very much.